Good evening, everyone. As we begin the meeting, I'll ask everyone to please silence cell phones and other electronic devices and remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of technology during council meetings. At 6:30 p.m., I'll call this council planning meeting to order. And I will note that Councillor Rowley has sent regrets for this evening's meeting. As we begin our meeting, I acknowledge that we are gathered on lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. We respectfully acknowledge that the Mississauga and Anishinaabe now of Alderville are the historic stewards of this place we now call Brighton. As we hear the truths behind our shared history, reconcile them with our past and with who we know we are today, we acknowledge that we are working toward right relations as good treaty people. In particular, we are grateful to work with the Indigenous treaty partners. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council approve the June 15th, 2026 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, are there any declarations of interest this evening? Councillor MacAusland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I just have a conflict of interest with item number 6.4. Just have family members as applicants.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, you mentioned you were going to be making a declaration this evening. Go ahead. Your microphone, Ron. You're going to need to make your declaration.
Right, regions, right. Did I say it wrong?
It's a 7.1, Ron. The Smithfield Communication Board.
Excuse me?
Is it 7.1, the Smithfield Communication Board?
Yes, it is.
You'll be making a declaration with regard to that?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations this evening? Thank you. We have no delegations listed. That brings us to our statutory public meeting. It's moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. That council move into a statutory public meeting June 15th, 2026 at 6:32 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirements of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds a statutory public meeting on the planning item and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which council will make a decision. It is during this meeting that council depends on the community to provide input for our decision. This input may be received in advance of the statutory public meeting by sending correspondence to the clerk's office and or by making an oral submission to council at the statutory public meeting. This will best inform council on the land use planning matter prior to council making our final decision. The province's regulations now limit appeal rights to only the applicant and specified regulated persons. For details or information on the new appeal process, please visit the municipal website or contact the clerk's office. First item in our statutory public meeting is a consent application file B04-2026. The location is 204 Ontario Street. The applicants are Gerard and Rainey. The purpose for the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision and to obtain public input towards making any decision on the proposed consent application. Ms. Britnell, by what method and on what date was notice of the application given?
Through your worship, notice of consent application B04-2026 was provided in compliance with the Planning Act with a public notice sign posted on the property as well as a notice of complete application of public meeting mailed to all landowners within 60 meters of the subject lands on May 22nd, 2026. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as required under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the subject applications before council this evening?
Through your worship, the purpose of consent application B04-2026 is to create a new 0.14 hectare 0.35 acre lot with 14 meters of frontage severed from 204 Ontario Street, County Road 66. The application will result in the retained lands having a total lot area of approximately 6.5 acres with 26.2 meters of frontage remaining on Ontario Street. This proposed parcel is zoned urban residential 1, and the severed parcel is intended to accommodate a future dwelling.
Thank you very much. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the subject application? There are none noted. Anyone online? No, thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding the subject application for members of council? There are none. Ms. Britnell, do you have any final comments?
Through your worship, none at this time.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor MacAusland, second by Councillor Wheeldon, that council approve consent application B04-2026 for the creation of a new residential lot on lands municipally known as 204 Ontario Street, subject to the conditions provided in this report. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next item in our statutory public meeting is for Clayton John Avenue, amendment to draft plan approval, sub 02-2022, and amendment to draft plan approval, file sub 2019-03. The applicant is the Municipality of Brighton. The purpose of the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision and to obtain public input towards making any decision. So, Mr. Warren, by what method and on what date was notice of the application given?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that notice of the municipally led amendments was provided in compliance with the Planning Act. The public notice sign was posted on the property, as well as notice of the public meeting mailed to all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands on May the 26th, 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the subject application before council this evening?
Yes, staff is seeking council endorsement for an extension, approximately a 300-meter extension of Clayton John Avenue, which is currently existing in the Brighton Meadows subdivision. It'll create a street connection, as I say, from Brighton Meadows, currently under construction, running north and parallel, offset to the west from Ontario Street up to the Westgate subdivision, which is also currently under construction and currently receiving an extension to municipal services. We're recommending the connection road between the two subdivisions to support a secondary access for both plans, as well as critical emergency services access. It will assist with traffic flow onto Ontario Street, although certainly not this summer, and improve access to environmentally protected lands west of the proposed new road alignment. Council's direction is requested prior to the council consideration of the draft plan and zoning amendment, which is coming forward for the Westgate draft plan soon, and the final approval of the Brighton Meadows draft plan. But both developers have provided support for the road extension, and the precise alignment is yet to be finalized, but it will encompass a 20-meter right-of-way with municipal servicing contained within that right-of-way.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Are there persons present who have any questions regarding the subject application? Sir? No, I get you to come to the microphone. You'll have to put your name on the form there for the record.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Brian Watt. I live at 123 Ontario Street. I'm opposed to this. It's just going to create more congestion at certain times of the day. Right now, as you mentioned, Mr. Warren, there's construction, so everything's funneling and bottlenecking. We got trucks going up and down Ontario Street at 70, 75, 80 kilometers. school bus traffic. I think that the road needs to go from Raglan to Highway 2 with a proper railroad crossing, either over or under. Right now, if you live south of the railroad, we're playing Russian roulette with lives. I was a firefighter in Toronto. I know what 4 minutes mean versus 7. Getting an ambulance or a fire truck down Ontario Street right now is a bit of an issue. We have campers, we have a lake. I think we have to improve that situation. I think by putting all of that traffic onto Ontario Street, it's going to cause more of an issue with the quality of the road surface as it is right now. So for those reasons and others, I just think that it's a bad plan and it's just going to cause more harm than good. You're going to put a lot more cars on the road. Every house in that community is going to have 2 or 4 cars if they end up renting the basement, which is kind of where the real estate market's heading. So yeah, I'm opposed to the plan.
So, Mr. Watt, just
Yes, sir.
for your information, the 2 subdivisions have been approved.
Yep.
They're moving forward.
Yep.
The only thing we're deciding this evening is whether to extend that one road north and south for service purposes.
Yep, I understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just think the road coming out onto Ontario is gonna cause more problems than solve.
Appreciate the statement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who wishes to make a comment with regard to the applications? Members of council? Any questions or comments with regard to the applications? My only question was there consideration to offset the road in any way, or can there be consideration to offset the road? Right now, it runs, give or take, parallel, almost directly parallel to Ontario Street, and I worry that we're creating a situation where people will drive much too quickly down that road in a significantly residential area. So I leave that with staff to work out with the developer, because I think if it was to offset, we would be able to control the speed a little bit better. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Mr. Warren, do you have any final comments?
Through your worship, none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council support the municipal-led revisions to council's previous decisions regarding the draft approved subdivisions of Brighton Meadows and Westgate for the purposes of establishing a connecting street between the two, and that staff be directed to amend the zoning bylaw consistently with the revised draft plans, and that council directs staff to receive all public and agency comments and report back at the following council session. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to application with regard to 400 Chatten Road, amendment of the official plan OPA 01-2026, including official plan amendment 21, consent application B06-2026, and consent application B07-2026. The applicants are Herrington and Herrington. The purpose of the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision, and to obtain public input toward making any decision on the proposed amendment number 21 to the Municipality of Brighton official plan and consent applications. So, Ms. Britnell, by what method and on what date was notice of the applications given?
Through your worship, notice of the statutory public meeting was for official plan amendment OPA 01-2026 and consent applications B06-2026 and 2027 was provided in compliance with the Planning Act, with a public notice sign posted on the property, as well as a notice of public meeting and complete application mailed to all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands on May 22nd, 2026. Notice was also circulated to all agencies as required under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. Would you please explain the purpose and reason for the subject applications before council this evening?
Through your worship, the purpose of official plan amendment is to redesignate the subject lands located at 400 Chatten Road from aggregate resource to rural designation. In the County of Northumberland official plans, the land would be redesignated through an official plan amendment taken to the County Council in late summer, demonstrating that the lands have no significant sand or gravel value. The appropriate zoning is already reflected with a rural residential zone. There is no, the subject applications will require an adoption of a county OPA 21 that lies with the upper tier decision. Decisions have been predicated on the passing of OPA number 3, which is a County of Northumberland County planning decision regarding prime agricultural lands that would have to be approved by the Ministry of Municipal Housing and Affairs. So beyond that, there are 2 consent applications, BO 2026, which is the proposal to sever the subject lands to create a rural lot for a future single detached dwelling. It is on the eastern side of Carmen Road at the intersection of Chatten and Carmen that would have an area of 0.57 hectares or 1.42 acres and would front on Carmen Road, an assumed and maintained public street. It is consistent with section 4.9.7 of the Municipality of Brighton's official plan policies. And further, there is a second consent application, BO7 2026, to sever a second rural lot for a future single detached dwelling that would have an area of 0.74 hectares or 1.8 acres with 83 meters of frontage along Carmen Road. There are some existing agricultural operations that are in the area, and the proposed severances do comply with zoning and the minimum distance setbacks set out by OMAFA as per all provincial regulations. So we have 3 applications to consider, an amendment to the municipal official plan, which would then go to the upper tier, and 2 consent applications under section 34 for the creation of new residential lots.
Thank you, Ms. Britnell. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the subject applications? There are none noted. Questions or comments from members of council? Again, none. Ms. Britnell, any final comments?
Through your worship, thank you for listening. None at this time.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council adopt official plan amendment number 21 that will redesignate the subject lands identified as 400 Chatten Road from aggregate resource designation to the rural designation in order to facilitate proposed severances. And that council approve consent applications B06 2026 and B07 2026 for the creation of 2 new residential lots, while authorizing minor modifications to the lot lines in accordance with the county's final approval of the official plan amendment, and that council will grant provisional consent for the subject severance applications B06 2026 and B07 2026, dependent on county council approvals. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That ends our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council move out of the statutory public meeting June 15th, 2026 at 6:48 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. That brings us to planning and development reports. The first report comes from our economic development and communications team with regard to the Smithfield Communication Board. Manager Hagerman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Not at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell. The council received this report for information as it relates to the Smithfield Communication Board location and direct staff to move forward with the installation of the board as originally intended in Smithfield. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I have spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I did go out to Smithfield today and connected with some residents, and I appreciate their time and their input. There were certainly some strong feelings about where it's going, and a lot of reasons and a lot of different perspectives in among the people that I talked to. I did speak to some residents who were in favor of it, several who were against. And I did follow up with staff. And one of the things that occurred to me is that we don't make decisions based on taking a tally of people who are for and against, except for the people who are sitting at these tables. So I didn't feel like I could just count how many spoke in favor or spoke against. I had to think back to, where is this coming from? And while this particular project did stem from most recently a council direction as a result of the Brighton Homelessness Task Force looking for ways to communicate important service information from the municipality in different places around the municipality. It was also used by staff to address other council priorities, and they have been priorities from the beginning of this term. In the last election campaign, we had a lot of discussions about communication and improving communication. And that has been a priority in our strategic plan, has resulted in us hiring staff, has resulted in us starting newsletters, and recognizing that the traditional modes of communication continue to dwindle. Social media continues to become less and less reliable. And so going old school and putting up posters is actually a step forward. As a result of prioritizing communication and trying to make sure that particularly rural residents feel heard and included in our community, trying to open up every communication line possible, I feel like this is not just a matter of this particular site or how many people are for or against, so much as it is a matter of, if we wanted to achieve our goals, the goals that we've been working towards throughout the term, and we wanted to do so using this, which we've already decided to do as a council, where would we best put it? And I've driven around Smithfield 4 or 5 times in the last couple of weeks, spent quite a bit of time there today as well. And happened to be there at school pickup time and had to keep moving off the sidewalk for all the people walking by through that space. I don't see a better place. And frankly, neither do our staff. They picked that spot deliberately in the first place, and then they came back and revisited it at our request, looking around for other options, and came back to this place again. So as much as I feel and hear the frustration of the residents who live closest to this sign and who feel that they are not being heard or acknowledged, I do want to acknowledge you. And I don't make decisions like this easily, but honestly, it's what we're here for, is to make decisions thinking of the long-term interests of the community, the goals that are part of our strategic plan, and what seems to be the best way forward to achieve those goals. So on that basis, I support it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon. Any other discussion? Councillor Butwell?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. To the rest of this table, so we definitely felt at the beginning of this term that there was a lot of work to be done towards improving communications, not just with our rural community, but with our community as a whole. And I think that's the spirit with which this communication board was brought about. I think it is it's nostalgic, but it's a useful tool. It's only one avenue. I think where perhaps this particular, because it's the only community at this point that is raising an issue. I think that where it may have fallen slightly short is that it is the goal is communication, but we perhaps failed to. It's not about asking permission. It is about informing the community what we're hoping to do, with the hopes of engaging the community. Because while I have heard some comments that maybe it might not be necessary in Smithfield is a very tight-knit community. There's a lot that happens there. There are ways that they are accustomed to communicating with each other. The location might have been something that the residents and the community as a whole might have wanted to have some input in. So I I would point out that little bit of irony that it is a communication board that perhaps it would have been nice for us to communicate ahead of time. Not saying that we did anything wrong. And certainly Manager Hagerman, I'm not saying that your department did anything incorrectly. I'm just saying that in hindsight, and it is always 2020, that it's a learning lesson for next time, possibly. As I understand it, the church was not really terribly interested in having it on their property, and that's fine. I'm wondering if we had a look at any other locations in Smithfield specifically. Did the question about partnering at the school, or I learned today that there's a park in Smithfield that I had no idea existed before, that the municipality, that's part of municipal property. Have we looked at putting it near the park? Is the park an inviting space that maybe this could be part of a project of revitalizing that park and creating that area that the community can go to? But I think we dropped the ball perhaps just at the front end, and we're finding ourselves having this discussion around the table about that. And again, please take no offense, that it not, because none is meant. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. There's a question about other spaces that might have been looked at.
Through the mayor to the rest of council, the intent for staff was to try to find the most high traffic volume space that we could, and that was what we identified. We wanted to get as many eyeballs on that sign as possible. So no, there was no other sites taken into account other than Smithfield Church with a meeting with some of the folks from up there.
Follow up?
Yeah, as a follow-up. So that's a busy location because that's where the school, essentially Kiss and Ride, is located. So we have a lot of traffic, but we have a lot of traffic of little people who are probably rushing in and out of the pathway. We do have a mailbox there, a super box, but it's one of 5 locations in Smithfield. So the increase in traffic, while there is some foot traffic to and from the school with walking families, is mostly the kids running up and down to access the sidewalk. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's great. We want to see them running around, but I just don't think that those are the users that are necessarily going to look. However, I understand that it would be the busiest location because it's the school. So I don't know if the schools, we'd have to consult with the school board on this, because I know that the community also uses the school grounds as a park after hours and on weekends. There might be some space, there might be a partnership that we could have there, and they could use the signboard as well for community events, that kind of thing. Don't know what that takes. Don't know if that's something that's worth considering at this point or whatnot.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a long conversation with one of the Smithfield residents today, and there was some very obvious distress over the location of this sign. And change is never easy. It's a small community. They're very close-knit. If there's an announcement to be made, they can probably shout it from their front door and everybody hears it. But that being said, they're also part of a larger community with the municipality of Brighton. I went back and forth, and Councillor Wielden and myself had a couple conversations today over this, and that's partially what initiated his drive out there, because he had the time to do that today. And I'm very grateful that he did do that. I was still buried in 560 pages of today's agenda. It's never an easy decision when you see something that for many of us seems like a simple, small thing impact people in such a way. But it's a sign that's supposed to bring us all together, to alert everybody to the things that we can't communicate in the traditional ways. We don't have a newspaper to drop in everybody's front door anymore. I wish that we did. it would make some of this so much easier and would make communication so much easier. And I agree with the Councillor Butwell that for something that is supposed to encompass communication, you know, there maybe could have been a little bit more effort to communicate with the immediate neighbors in such a close-knit community that there was going to be a change coming and allow them a little bit of input. Didn't have to be anything drastic, but people want to be heard. And we've spent a lot of time around this table trying to wrestle with the idea of how to make our rural residents more heard. And here again, we are with a sign based on communication that the residents are feeling not heard about. And I get that the property is municipal property and that we can do what we want on municipal property. That's all very true, but I don't think it negates the idea that a little bit of communication can go a long way in making everybody feel better about some of the changes that we're imposing on residents, even though it seems like it's a good imposition in so many ways. So, you know, there's part of me that wishes that there is another spot. There is the parquet, but the parquet needs some serious revamping. There is a historical plaque going up in that space. It would be lovely to see that maybe come to life a little bit more. And maybe at some point that community sign could then be shifted down that way. I'm not sure what the full answer is, but I think for the interim, this may be the best spot.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I've also been speaking to members of the Smithfield community, and it's about 50-50. 50 who don't want the sign there and 50% who say they want a sign in Smithfield somewhere. They fairly agnostic as to where that is, but it would be good from a communication perspective. Lots of people do not have social media and choose not to engage in internet communications. And aren't they smart at the end of the day? Having been on social today alone, I don't know what it would take to move the sign or change our MOU with the school board. I do know what I do know the machinations we go through every time we have to engage with the school board about one thing or another. It's never an easy process, and it usually takes many more months than we want it to. So I would concur with Councillor Wright at this stage that this is probably the best spot for now, at least. And if there's another spot at another time, we can always move this sign. But I do think that the people of Smithfield deserve to have a communications board. I also concur that perhaps we could have communicated about the communications board a little better. And so we can have that conversation moving forward about better communications. I think about how we communicated the telephone road issues over the course of the last few months, and making sure that every single resident on Telephone Road and the arterial roads from Telephone Road received notice from the municipality, recognizing the damage that was happening on their road, and offering the solutions that we were going to put in place, which we are now engaging in. So certainly not road work, but and I think maybe the blind spot was we thought we were doing good, and we didn't realize that it would have a negative impact. I'll ask one more time if there's any further comment on the motion. Councillor Botwell.
One more thing, as the mover of this motion, I would like to add an amendment to it.
You're the seconder.
I'm the seconder?
Yeah, but you can talk to your friend right beside you. He's the mover.
Mr. Friend. We have to do it publicly. Mr. Friend, might you be amenable to a friendly amendment to include initiating a conversation with the school board?
I have concerns about that. While the people going to the school largely do pass by the current site of the sign, the people who do not go to the school will not be going to the school to see the sign. That is a sidewalk that people would walk by, whether they were going to the church or to the mailbox or to other things. If we put it on school property, it will be just for parents.
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Wielden. We have a lot of people that use that school property. There are parents that park in the parking lot. There's teachers that are in parking lot. We have caregivers. Yes, a lot of them are passing on the sidewalk walking in, but we have also people beyond just walking who live in Smithfield. Smithfield encompasses more than the Four Corners. And by your logic, I'm assuming, because are we factoring in the postal box thing into this? Do we need 5 signs? Smithfield has its own rural area as well to it. There's the little village, correction. And I think it would provide a sign, which is what we want, and it would also perhaps assuage some of the concerns that those who are feeling unheard have. Alternatively, I have spoken with somebody from the community, and we're going to try to figure out how to rehab that parquet, and perhaps it can be looked at being integrated into that design. So adding in an amendment at alternate locations in future.
Question for the mayor, maybe CAO. Would we need to have an amendment to this motion in order to consider moving it in at a future time?
No.
Okay. So if that becomes available, then we can just have a motion at that time. I don't know that we need to bake it into this one.
I think that recording what we intend to do in writing holds us accountable. Some of us may not be here by the time this happens.
As the mover, I don't intend to do that unless there's reason to do that. And so holding us accountable to a hypothetical doesn't seem reasonable.
So just to clarify, you're not in favor of the friendly amendment?
I'm not. I think it's complicated and might commit us to doing something that is not in the interest of the community, or not even a possibility in future. And so I don't like being on record committing to relocating a sign if we don't yet know if there's a place to relocate it to. We're several steps removed from that, I think. I'm open to the idea of sprucing up the park. Whether or not the park is spruced up may or may not be the highest traffic area. And I think that's the most important consideration. So until we have that information, I don't know that I want to commit to anything. And if we do have that information, then we can make a motion at that time, and I'd probably be in favor of it.
All right, I'll wait a few minutes and see what happens.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Go ahead.
Can I have a recorded vote, please?
You may. Madam Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Butwell.
Councillor Ann Butwell,
No.
Councillor Hannah MacAusland,
Yes.
Councillor Jeff Wilden,
Yes.
Councillor Bobby Wright,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Strinder,
Yes.
and that's been carried.
The next item in staff reports is from Economic Development Communications, Community Improvement Plan 2026 intake. Ms. Birch, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Councillor Wielden, that council accept and approve funding for the 4 community improvement plan applications submitted during the 2026 intake period for properties located at 19 Main Street, 72 Main Street, 17 to 19 Prince Edward Street, and 21 Prince Edward Street, for an estimated total amount of $25,600. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Next report is with regard to official plan amendment 23 for the Brighton secondary plan. Municipal Planning Advisor Barnes, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I do not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The recommendation of Report 2026-77 be amended and replaced in its entirety with the following. The council receives this report regarding the Brighton area-wide efficient land use plan, secondary plan, and the council adopt official plan amendment number 23 to the Municipality of Brighton official plan to implement the Brighton area-wide efficient land use plan, secondary plan, and direct staff to bring forward a bylaw for passing at the next available council session. And that following council's final passing of the adoption bylaw, staff be directed to forward the adopted official plan amendment and supporting documentation to Northumberland County for approval pursuant to the Planning Act. Is there any discussion? Councillor MacAusland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is done very well. I just have one comment I would like to make in regards to the cash in lieu of parkland. I just think that if we're still taking consideration for cash in lieu of parkland, that we need to be using that money for the purposes. If they're in reserves, I just think that kids need something, or everyone needs a place to get out and play, express, just read a book in nature, get outside. It's one thing that people are kind of not doing anymore. They're staying indoors, they're playing on their phones, they're not living in the real world, they're living in the reality world. And I think that it's something that we need to not consider, because if we're taking that away from them, then what else is there left for them to do besides what they're doing already? So I just think it's one thing that we do talk a lot about, and we like to see people out in our community enjoying our community. So I think we need to continue to push that.
Thank you for that. I don't think anyone would disagree with those comments with regard to getting to the outdoors. I would like clarification around where monies go when we collect them in lieu of parkland. And I see the two Pauls looking at each other like, who's going to field this one? Gentlemen, I don't care. Somebody speak into a microphone.
Through the Mayor to Council, so under the Planning Act, we either ask for parkland or we get payment in lieu of parkland at various rates. And that money, once collected, it goes into a dedicated parkland reserve fund. And according to the Planning Act, it has to be there for parkland and only parkland. So it's a prescribed reserve fund.
Councillor MacAusland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Just a question off the top of my head, would a splash pad be considered a parkland?
I think the splash pad is a parkland facility, and parkland reserve fund, might turn to my neighbor here, may not be eligible under the parkland reserve fund. It needs to be funded separately, but I could be corrected here. If I may pass it over.
Mr. Treasurer.
Through your mayor, it's the other Paul. So there are specified projects and things that reserve can be spent on. I would have to get back to you on a splash pad and the exact requirements. I feel like it's something I look at kind of once a year, and so I don't want to speak off the top of my head on what exactly can be funded from that reserve.
Thank you all. Councillor Wright.
How much money is in that reserve fund
There's a
currently?
nice question. Treasurer Creamer, you're going to look that one up, or do you know it off the top of your head?
Through your mayor, there's a lot of numbers up there, but that's not one I can pull off the top of my head. Yeah, I'll through you to, I'll have to get that number. Yeah.
Would you be kind enough to send an email out to all members of council, please?
Yes,
Thank you for that. Councillor Wheeldon, actually, you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out all of the work that has gone into this over several years at this point. And I really appreciate seeing all of the comments that have been made up to this point annotated here with consolidated staff response and status. I really appreciate all of the input that has come not just from this table, but from the public and from committees. I think we can be really proud of the result here.
Thank you for that. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Creamer. While we're getting some information on the amount of money in there, would you have the ability to cut and paste from somewhere what the eligible expenses are, whether it's for maintenance, whether it's for new infrastructure, that kind of thing. So that we could perhaps prepare our own ask list for budget time.
We're getting a positive response, so we'll get a more robust email than just a number. Councillor Wright.
Just a fun little comment. My husband wanted me to pass on his thanks for removing the word livestock from what I can have in the backyard. So he knows I can't bring home a goat. Very thankful.
I have no comment. Anyone else? I just want to thank staff for getting us to this finish line. I think this is an incredible amount of work. Mrs. Whiteman, Mr. Barnes, the planning staff team who work in the office on an ongoing basis. This helps create a prescribed level of planning for the municipality of Brighton, and it's important. It's something that was important to me many years ago, and I think important to this council as we started down the road of, you know, what do we want Brighton to look like, and more importantly, what does the Brighton community want Brighton to look like? So, thank you for the robust communication. Especially after our last discussion, I think that's we can see the efforts that were made here, and you have my thanks for that, and my thanks to all staff for getting us across this finish line tonight. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. Next report is with regard to the updated land lease agreement. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council approve the bylaw and related land lease agreement presented in this agenda, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to execute a land lease agreement with Donnelly Farms, Inc. for municipally owned farmland, and that council approve an increase in the lease rate from $40 per acre per annum to $55 per acre per annum. Is there any discussion? Councillor Butwell.
This was the one that I moved. The other one I wanted to speak on. So thank you very much, Director. I know we've spoken about this previously. So I am, however, not satisfied in that number of 55. In speaking with other tenant farmers, we'll call it, and farmers, that number still is low for our immediate area and for the type of crop that's being grown. Also, in my primary role as a realtor, I am, have access to a lot of information. I also did some research with the Ontario Farmland Value and Rental Value Survey site. There is historical data from 2016 right up to 2025, and it itemizes specifically Northumberland as one of the two lower value regions. Three, Manitoulin, was it Niagara and Northumberland, with an average of $100 an acre, which I was actually surprised about because anecdotally through the community, it's higher. At 55, I don't think we're doing best by our taxpayers in obtaining the market value for the land that we own. We purchased it at somewhat of a premium because we had vision for it. And then on the leasing outside, offer it at a discount seems counterintuitive to me. So I cannot support this particular motion. And that is why I would just ask that, or ask my fellow councillors to acknowledge, yes, the work that's been done, but the amount is insufficient for this land. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor MacAusland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Just for clarification, for this farmer's lease rate was from us, was it $40 last year and now we want to increase it to 55, or was it from the previous landowner?
No, the current tenant paid us last year $40 an acre. This year,
Okay.
we're asking for $55 an acre.
Okay, thank you.
Director, have we negotiated that with the tenant? Is the tenant aware of this amount?
That's correct, Mayor. Some background to that. So I also went looking for a reference to find some up-to-date market numbers, and that's referenced in the report. I'm not sure if that's the same reference that Councillor Butwell was referencing. The average, or not the average, the median as reported on that website is $75. And of course, for those of us who work with stats, the median is not the average, and it's not necessarily a midpoint even of a normal distribution. So there's a lot of variation there. A lot of that variation will be related to farmland that of a variable productivity. So in this case, we have lands that are subject to slope. That means erosion, and erosion means disruption to seed and other things. So lesser productivity there. And then other parts of the property towards the railway tracks are low-lying. And you can see it until recently, relatively recently, that it was wet. So it becomes what farmers like to call a late field. So that also decreases productivity. So you have to make those kinds of adjustments. Then thirdly, this is a short-term lease, not favorable to a farmer. If they really want to plant something that's like a forage crop like hay or something, then that's to seed that down, you want to get 5 years out of it. So for all those reasons, this might be a discounted property. So I was accepting of the rate of the $50 that's been recommended for those reasons. Now that survey didn't have the most up-to-date market rates. It was, I think, about 2 years behind, I think. But it's what we had to work with, and I thought it was sufficient, and based on a short-term contract, that it was appropriate.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wright. Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the director. I stand corrected. It was median. I read it clearly wrong. The report 2 years ago from 2023 indicates that Northumberland was 50. So it appears that you are looking at data that is several years out of date. So the most current data that is out there is the 2025 data, and that is 100. I took a little wander over there today, and I can see that even in those lower lying areas, we have, I mean, stuff's growing. We do have a slope because it comes down from Highway 2. Just for Councillor MacAusland, so I believe that was the historic number that was in place prior to the municipality's acquisition of the property. And I highlighted at the time that it was incredibly low. We're looking, I think I mentioned 150 to 200. I don't remember. I don't have notes on it. Would be more in the range for what was being grown at the time. And we were going to be brought at the end of that 2-year term. We were going to be consulted for what we wanted, what we were interested in looking at. We were buying time. And it was through another one of the reports that we discovered that another lease agreement had been entered into without what I was feeling was the appropriate amount. So that's where this has come from.
Thank you for that. At the end of the day, the difference between $55 an acre and the median of $75 an acre is about $500 a year. So, and I get it's $500, but it's the taxpayers' money. I understand all of that. But we're going to spend a lot of time here talking about $500. And we're going to put our hands up in the air and spend $2 million, no problem at all, on some large infrastructure project. So I just, this is really a bookmark, right? At the end of the day, and we know that.
I know that. I know that as well. I think that the way we spend the $500 item and the way we spend the $50,000 item, do they warrant the same amount of time? No, but I also feel that at $100 an acre, which is what I would be paying for hay. And I don't believe that's hay there this year. I'm not entirely sure. So hay at $100 an acre that's market rate. So I want to ensure that whether it's the $500 item or the $50,000 item, that we're doing the right thing. And I know everyone gets it.
I'm not going to shut down the debate. I just want to point out we are debating $500 here, give or take.
$500. We debated less.
Oh, we sure have.
At the grant and aids.
Yes, ma'am, we sure have. Anything further on the motion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. And the next report is with regard to the proposed Planning Act changes. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing too material, Mayor, just that staff continue to have some dialogue with the Ontario Provincial Planners Institute to see if they've got a seat at the table in discussions for the actual regulations that follow this. What we don't know at this time, whether the actual fines will be prescribed as a regulation or will have discretion through an AMP bylaw. So that question remains outstanding.
Another bill without regulations behind it. Imagine that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council express general support for the amendments to the Planning Act to enable the use of administrative monetary penalties for zoning bylaw infractions and direct staff to monitor the progress of Ontario Bill 119, Protecting Ontario's Streets and Communities Act 2026 as it relates to such amendments, and that upon enactment of the relevant amendments, staff be directed to report back to Council with the recommendations for implementing changes to Administrative Monetary Penalty Bylaw number 070-2023 and Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw number 140-2002, including any associated administrative considerations. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I very much support using administrative monetary penalties rather than clogging up provincial courts with municipal enforcement matters. And I'm sure that that's why the province keeps allowing us to do this, because they have significant backlogs provincially. That said, the last time we brought in new AMPs, it took up a lot of the deputy clerk's time. And so I hope that however we structure this, we make sure that our staff are adequately supported so that perhaps any money we bring in for AMPs can go into supporting the enforcement and review process.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Councillor Butwell.
I definitely concur. I would have concerns over, depending on what the item was that we were enforcing, that our deputy clerk would have the appropriate person power or tools at their discretion. AMPs are not appealable, though, I don't believe, are they? Are they appealable?
Yeah.
I appeal to Jessica. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But beyond.
There are two appellate processes. One is through the clerk's office, which is really just a dotting of the i's and crossing of the t's question.
Mhm.
And the other then is through an AMP officer that we hire. Usually it's a lawyer. In fact, in our case, it is a lawyer who hears people's actual appeals like a justice of the peace might without the robes.
But it's a much more direct avenue than.
Yeah, and it's usually done by virtual means.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no showing up in court or anything like that. You
Right.
have a virtual
Gotcha.
hearing. And I'm going to suggest that the number of AMPs with regard to zoning bylaw infractions would be considerably less than the number of AMPs that came in through through speeding enforcement options that once upon a time happened here in the municipality. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next report is with regard to site plan control approval. Manager Warren, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council receives a staff report for the purposes of information as an update to council regarding a summary of recent site plan approvals in the municipality. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon?
Thank you, Mayor. I told Manager Warren this when I saw him on the street last week, but I want to say it publicly as well that I really appreciate these updates. These updates, the CAO's updates, the building permit updates, it is overwhelming to see how much our staff are doing in this community, and I love to see it. So thank you.
Once upon a time, these all used to come to council for approval. So thankfully, we have decided to delegate to staff for this purpose. With regard to Empire Gate 2 Empire Boulevard, the one that's under construction, I did have a question from a neighbor with regard to fencing. Is there a fencing requirement on that?
There is a fence at I guess it's the south end. Yes, south to the property line as well as to the west.
That, I think that was the question. So there will, is it going to be a privacy fence? Right now, it's just a chain link construction fence.
It would generally be a privacy fence for anything where there's commercial or industrial abutting residential.
Thank you
Yes.
for that. Appreciate that. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next report is with regard to the enactment of Bill 98. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Mayor, just to concur with your earlier statement about a lot of legislative changes about enactments of that long list. I think there's only one that has actually been proclaimed, and that was the prohibition for having climate change and sustainability measures put into site plan control processes. Other than that, most of them are still needing regulatory enactment.
And long periods of time to between the passing of the bill and the regulations being provided. I'm going to read the motion first. It's moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council receive the staff report for purposes of information. Councillor Righ.
With regards, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to those environmental considerations, I noted that it said that as a municipality, we can still continue to have our own environmental requirements. But will this likely mean then that we could get pushback from developers to drop those when it comes down to it?
Director.
Oh, good question. It's just a matter of clarification, I guess, is that municipalities are no longer able to make it mandatory or a requirement, but we are allowed to incent it through other means. So some municipalities have community benefit bylaws, for example. It might be able to flow through that. I haven't investigated that thoroughly, but there are other tools to be incentives.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I would also point out the number of regulatory changes that have been made, legislative changes that have been made to the Planning Act over the course of the last 6 years or so. I don't think we've gone through too many planning meetings where we haven't had staff provide us with a report on another change to the Planning Act. And I would, just for the sake of the public's information, I know that Councillor Wheeldon and the joint, the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness delegated to Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. It wasn't the minister himself that was there. It was a parliamentary assistant, I believe. Deputy Minister, Parliamentary Assistant, something like that, where the request was, please just give us a second to catch our breath. We need a moment from a small community planning authority perspective to catch our breath, and then by all means go ahead and make more changes, but let us catch our breath. And of course, 3 weeks later we had another change. So I guess that wasn't heard very well, Councillor Wheeldon. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? None opposed, that motion is carried. The next report is 2026-88 pre-servicing agreement. Applewood Meadows. Oops. Phase 4. Manager Warren, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no comment at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that Council accept the staff report dated June 15th, 2026, pertaining to the municipality entering into a pre-servicing agreement with 8597685 Canada Inc., and that Council endorse, authorize, and accept the pre-servicing agreement and direct staff to provide a copy of the agreement for the applicant's signature, and that staff be authorized to make necessary design revisions as may arise in final review of the drawings as may be necessary through final municipal engineering review. And further, that Council enact the required bylaw authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign the pre-servicing agreement on behalf of the municipality coming into effect on the date of the signatures. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next report is 2026-89, application number PLC 02-2026, Hamilton Woods, Phase 2, Planner Brentnell, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through your worship, not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council enacts the bylaw as shown in the bylaws section of this agenda to exempt from part lot control certain lands specifically described as Block 36, Plan 39 M959, as submitted by 10007175504 Ontario Limited, and that council instruct the municipal solicitor to register the part lot control bylaw as enacted, together with any revisions legally necessary for accuracy and registration, and to prepare a transfer of easement from the owner to the municipality regarding parts 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12, and 13, Block 36, as 2 individual residential lots, as shown on Registered Plan 39R 14948 prior to registration of the part lot control bylaw, including any access or transfer easements from the owner to the municipality. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to report 2026-90 applications PLC 03 2026 and PLC 04 2026. Hamilton Woods Phase 2. Planner Brentnell, we've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through your worship, not at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor MacAusland, that council enacts a bylaw as shown in the bylaw section of this agenda to exempt from part lot control certain lands specifically described as Block 18 and Block 17, Plan 39 M929, as submitted by 10007175504 Ontario Limited and Gordon Toby Developments Limited, and that council instruct the municipal solicitor to register the part lot control bylaw as enacted, together with any revisions legally necessary for accuracy and registration, as shown on parts 1 and 2 on Registered Plan 39R 14697, known as 2 and 4 Cardinal Court, parts 9, 10, and 11 on Registered Plan 39R 14669, known as 8 Cardinal Court, and parts 12, 13, and 14, known as 10 Cardinal Court. The 4 individual lots are to be shown.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the correction.
No problem. Are to be shown prior to registration of the part lot control bylaw, include any access or transfer easements from the owner to the municipality. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to report 2026-93 part lot control exemption application PLC 01 2026 Applewood Meadows. Manager Warren, we've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, nothing further at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council enacts a bylaw. The bylaw is shown in the bylaws section of this agenda to exempt from part lot control certain lands specifically described as Block 19, Plan 39 M961, as submitted by 8597685 Canada Inc., and the council instruct the municipal solicitor to register the part lot control bylaw as enacted, together with any revisions legally necessary for accuracy and registration, and to prepare a transfer easement from the owner to the municipality regards parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 16, and parts 1, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14 as individual residential lots, as shown on Reference Plan 39R 15156 prior to registration of the part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to report 2026-94, Development Charge Reduction Program. Treasurer Creamer, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through you, Mayor. Actually, I might take a minute just here to make a couple comments. First of all, I'm going to be happy to answer any questions on this, but I'll do my best to answer. I may not have all the answers. The program was sent out 2 weeks ago. Many questions have arisen from it. In order to get some of those answers, I've consulted other municipalities. I've worked with our DC consultants. but still do have some outstanding questions. So, in tight turnarounds like this, we're doing kind of the best we can with the information that we have. But so in the report, I have done my best to explain the program and the proposed projects, and the rationale of why we chose those projects. I also tried to explain that there are risks and benefits of the program. And I want to highlight that you will see the biggest risk of this program is that development outpaces current forecasts, and by some calculations, if that amount is 34%. So if we develop at a rate greater than that, any reduction to the development charges beyond that growth rate will be funded by the municipality. So one of the ways I've tried to reduce that rate or the risk is proposing a 30% reduction, as I do believe that builds in a buffer. And the hard part is if we are growing and we are building that development, that can be good for the community in other ways. Growth means increased assessment that we would not have gotten otherwise. So there is risk to a program like this, and there's benefits. And so I am looking to council for some direction on this. Typically, I do like to provide a recommendation, and this might be one that I truly don't have one, and am looking for direction.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon and seconded by Councillor MacAusland. And I guess before I read it, members of council, I want to know, is it your intention to provide this direction so we are directing staff to make application? Because the recommendation is that council provide direction. And so it becomes a bit nebulous. Are we therefore, I don't think we should pass a motion that says we should provide something. I think we should pass a motion that provides direction, actually does that. So if it, as the mover, Councillor Wheeldon, is your intention to tell staff to submit an application, then we should make that clear. Is that your intention? Councillor MacAusland as a seconder? Yes. So right now, the second line reads that council provide direction to staff, and I think it should read that council directs staff to submit an application. Clear? Okay.
I do have questions for.
I'll get there.
Yeah.
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor MacAusland, that council receive this report on the development charge reduction program for information, and that council direct staff to submit an application to the development charge reduction program prior to the June 19th, 2026 deadline, comprising of the water main twinning phase 1 project and water booster station projects, on the basis of a 30% residential development charge rate reduction maintained for 3 years, at an estimated municipal contribution of $270,000, representing the required 10% share of eligible project costs to be funded from future municipal budgets. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question, Treasurer Creamer, is can you actually get it done in 4 days?
Treasurer.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Wheeldon. I think we have a good framework. It'll, the quality probably won't be what I would hope to have output in terms of that tight turnaround time. I think we divvy up the application between the right people in the organization. I think we can get something out the door. Yes.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mayor. So assuming that we can actually do it, and I know you wouldn't have brought it to us if you couldn't achieve it, but it is a very tight timeline, and I'm sorry that we have to scramble like this. I've been following DCs have been the buzzword of this entire term. We've been talking about it since day one, and I have been following it in a lot of economists, missing middle initiative, things like that, looking at the principles of DCs being that growth should pay for growth. Still makes a tremendous amount of sense. The rules about DCs have I think quite clearly always been written for the sake of Toronto and other GTA communities where supposedly DCs amount to 30% of the cost of construction and things like that. Whereas here in Brighton, it's more like 5%. Nonetheless, the idea that the province is going to make us whole is something they've been talking about all term. And if this is the way that we can reduce DCs and remain whole, I think that's wonderful. I am unsure of some of the discussion of risk here. Is it the risk that we have to commit to reducing DCs by 30% and then may never get grants to be made whole?
Through your mayor to Councillor Whelan. We will not reduce the DCs until the TPA is signed, and so we have approval and we've actually signed the TPA. So there's not a commitment to do that today. It's a commitment to submit an application and see if we are approved for the grant program.
Just for the sake of clarity and for everyone listening, TPA stands for what?
My apologies, I shouldn't do that. Transfer payment agreement. So essentially the agreement with the province.
Okay, so we don't cut our DCs until we know for sure that they're going to pony up. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you both. Anyone else? There's been some question about why we wouldn't apply for the wastewater pollution control plant. I understand because we've already received 35 million or so dollars from the province, it would not be an eligible project. Is that true?
To you, Mayor, that's correct. And the program guidelines explicitly identify USIF projects or projects that have received USIF funding as ineligible.
USIF stands for Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't know.
I didn't want to do it to you twice, Paul. Okay, anyone else with any questions? And I get the importance of this exercise. I'm not sure how successful Brighton will be at this. I just don't want to raise expectations unnecessarily. I believe this program is entirely meant for larger communities, GTA, Ottawa, Windsor, etc. When you consider that, the top 6 or so DC charging municipalities are all GTA municipalities, and every single one of them charges over $100,000 in development charges, with the top numbers running in the 180, almost $200,000. So, when I'm asked, could Brighton half theirs sort of the way Vaughan did? My answer is, in order to get to Vaughan's rate, we'd have to triple ours. And we're not going to do that. It makes no sense. The development charges are for growth to pay for growth. We've already engaged in those Planning Act, not requirements, but suggestions that we postpone the payment of development charges until after the home is sold. We've already gone down that road through policy, which I think is fair. That was a good and right thing to do, and Brighton jumped on board that as quickly as we could. That said, I still think we should apply. I don't think it would be any hurt in any way other than your significant amount of time, Mr. Treasurer. But if we get the money, great. I really do think this program is intended for much larger communities than Brighton. So I don't want there to be heightened expectation that we're going to get significant funds out of this program. Go ahead, Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. That's probably wise. With regard to the intent of cutting DCs, as you said, we do already defer because the province requires us to, but also by our own choice, just prior to the province making that change, to the point of sale. And the whole point of reducing or deferring DCs both is to pass on those savings to buyers, home buyers. And a couple of years ago now, the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness had a housing solutions workshop, and Manager Warren was there. It was a very interesting workshop. But we sat around the table with members of the development community and realtors and bankers and all sorts of people. And in speaking to one representative from the development community, I asked, hypothetically, what if we piled incentive on top of incentive and rebate on top of rebate to the point where we had a $5 house? Would that house cost $5? And he said, no, of course not. I have people that I have to pay. I have, the future is uncertain. I might not sell another house next month or next year. It would be in the interest of my business to make sure that I continue to maximize profits, even with all of these things. Now, I've since spoken to other developers who have said, no, if I can undercut my competition by saving money in the construction process, then I would happily have a lower priced home. And so I know that there's mixed perspectives on this. And I know that a lot of it is market dependent. Right now, we're in a slower market. And so having a lower priced home actually really does matter. But all of that said, there's nothing in any of this that requires that those savings be passed along. And so the mechanisms that we have to try and get lower priced homes are general guidelines that may actually not get us to what we're looking for. So, you know, I'm glad to see that we as a municipality are able to provide a basis for that and without losing money. That's great. And I hope that local developers will do their best to pass those savings along. Given market conditions, I'm sure that they do want to. But in general, as a policy, these are a whole lot of carrots and no sticks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Treasurer.
Through your mayor to Councillor Whelan, just a point of clarification, because I think you said it a couple times there, without losing money, there is a cost to the municipality at a minimum of the 270,000, and then it'll depend on the growth rate in terms of how much the municipality bears in terms of the cost of that reduction. So I just want to be clear that it's not zero cost. You know, it is a cost that we can bear, but just to be clear, it's not zero.
Is it a cost we would bear if we did not apply for this funding? Or would that money come from DCs?
To you, Mayor, that money would come from DCs. So the expectation from the province is that the municipality is contributing to the program.
So the expectation from the province is that existing residents will pay for growth. Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion's carried. Moving on to item 8, items for information purposes. This is the report 2026-75 official plan and zoning bylaw 5-year review process. Special projects planner Renee Whiteman. We've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, nothing at this point. Thank you.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon. That council receive this report, official plan and zoning bylaw review project work plan for information purposes, and that staff be directed to circulate this report to council's advisory committees for information purposes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have nothing listed under unfinished business. Brings us to bylaws. The first bylaw is with regard to part lot control, right? Yeah. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 50 Sub 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 as amended, designating certain lands situated in the municipality of Brighton, specifically described as Block 18, Plan 39 M929, exempt from part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. The next bylaw is also with regard to part lot control. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 50 Sub 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 as amended, designating certain lands situated in the municipality of Brighton, specifically described as Block 19, Plan 39 M961, exempt from part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is a bylaw with regard to a land lease agreement. It's moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Donnelly Farms, Inc., care of Kelly R. Sharp, regarding the use of municipally owned lands for purposes of normal farming practices on the property located in lots 31 and 32, concession B, described as parts 1, 3, and 5 on reference plan 39R 12408 in the Municipality of Brighton in the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. Next bylaw is with regard to a pre-servicing agreement. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor MacAusland, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and 8597685 Canada Inc. regarding a pre-servicing agreement for Phase 4 of the Applewood Meadows subdivision. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next bylaw is with regard to part lot control. It's moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 50 Sub 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 as amended, designating certain lands situated in the Municipality of Brighton, specifically described as Block 18, Plan 39M 929, exempt from part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next bylaw is with regard to Amendment 21 of the official plan. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to adopt an amendment to the official plan of the corporation of the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And the next bylaw is with regard to part lot control. It's moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 50 Sub 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 as amended, designating certain lands situated in the Municipality of Brighton, specifically described as Block 36, Plan 39M 959, exempt from part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. And another bylaw with regard to part lot control. It's moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Councillor Wheeldon, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 50 Sub 5 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 as amended, designating certain lands situated in the Municipality of Brighton, specifically described as parts 9, 10, 11 of Registered Plan 39R 14669 and parts 12, 13, and 14 of Registered Plan 39R 14669, Block 17, Plan 39M 929, not subject to part lot control. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to question period. Is there anyone in the gallery that may have a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda? There are none noted. We have no closed session. Our confirmatory bylaw is moved by Councillor MacAusland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the corporation of the Municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on June 15th, 2026. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor MacAusland, that the June 15th, 2026 council planning meeting adjourn at 7:58 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Our meeting ends